last year when I scrapped Valentine's Half Month 6, delaying it for this year, this was one of the reviews I scrapped. And with how much I wanted to talk about this episode last year, this was not really close to revisiting due to the state I was last year. But if I wasn't, I would have at least reviewed this episode in favor of the other Valentine's half-month videos that I ended up delaying in further months last year. Mainly the Gibby episode from my colleague, the OKKO episode involving Rad and Shannon, and the Jimmy Neutron episode involving Sheen and Libby. So, this ended up becoming one of those last reviews that I ended up scrapping, which was so close for me to consider on making my review of it sooner, but at the same time, last year was really a pain for me when it came to the ludicrous and claustrophobic schedule that I went through of 2024. So since I'm not skipping out on this month unlike last year, it's time for me to talk about the best Kankers Sisters episode, which isn't saying much considering the mixed reputation of the fan base's point of view on the Kankers. The Kankers have been going after the Eds multiple times when it comes to the beginning of the episode, and the Eds need to find a strategy in order to get the Kankers out of their lives. Double D tries to find some inspiration, and then when he sees Wolf trying to break down a rock with a smaller rock, which is somewhat reverse psychology, this gave him the idea in order to use reverse psychology against the Kankers Sisters. Ed manages to do reverse psychology against the Kankers Sisters, and while they run away, they're not completely finished. In order to get rid of the Kankers forever, they need to defeat them way more to the point that they're so afraid of them that they will never bother them again. To be perfectly real, the fact that Double D is really considering on going further with this plan, honestly, I would probably do the same, judging of how the Eds went through so much pain when it comes to the Kankers Sisters sexually harassing them. Yes, I said it. This episode really sums up a lot that this show knew how to handle the enemies, mainly the Kankers Sisters, get a taste of their own medicine, but aside from minor occasions, it doesn't change the fact that outside of this episode, they're OP, to the point that no matter what the Eds do or the Kovasak kids do, they would get overpowered by the Kankers. Mainly one of the first episodes where the Kankers Sisters harass Kevin in the junkyard. I'm not gonna lie, I really feel like that the Kankers really are the definition of OP, mainly of how they can instantly handicap literally everyone to the point that they will not stop until they get what they want. And with this reverse psychology thing that the Eds are doing, the fact that this is only being used once, the episode's message is that when you do reverse psychology, you may be able to reverse what your enemy is doing to you, but then again, the ending of the episode showcased that the Kankers did reverse psychology. And the biggest reason onto why they did that in the first place is because, unlike Double D and Ed, Eddy is extremely paranoid of the Kankers. Honestly, I don't really blame him, and him being completely nervous. Honestly, if you can relate to Eddy in this episode when it comes to him confronting his fear, and then when he tries to do reverse psychology towards the Kankers, it's too late, especially since that we don't see how he handles it, since that he ends up getting you-know-what along with Double D and Ed. It really gave me the impression that they knew Eddy is really incapable of facing his biggest fear, unlike Double D and Ed. If anyone's gonna mention this, yes, I'm fully aware that the creator had experiences during childhood when it comes to the goals he interacted, and back at that time, laws were not that good compared to today's standards, but looking at this episode of how it's the biggest Kankers episode that's considered the better ones, I really feel like that if they continue this charade a little longer when it comes to reverse psychology, and if this show was for adults rather than kids, then I'm pretty sure he will have taken inspiration a little too far. And if this show wasn't made in Canada, then I'm pretty sure that there would have been more limitations. Granted, I don't know how the development of this show works in Canada, but the way I see it, I'm going to convince that the creator really wanted to explore his past, which is fine, but for how he made the Kankers really OP, it's really difficult to believe that the Eds never won up against the Kankers, even in this episode. Eddy may have confronted them in a fistful of Ed, along with the finale of the movie where the Kankers are more interested into Eddy's brother, sure, but at the same time, looking back at these episodes really sums up a lot that the reverse psychology only being worked once can only make the Kankers weak. And another reason why the reverse psychology works is because they made the Kankers dumb in this episode. Yes, they were dumb in other episodes, but in my opinion, this is where the IQ has been lowered. Even if it's mainly for reverse psychology, it's literally the only way for these Kankers to be less OP in this is that if their IQ is way lower. Granted, they're not stupid, but what I mean is the fact that they're being tricked into this reverse psychology. But for the episode's favor, it somewhat works. Especially since when Double D and Ed are trying to traumatize them, just like they traumatize the Eds when they encountered Eddy, he also reacts to the point that even to this day, it's way more humorous considering that with Eddy not being part of this reverse psychology, this really aged a lot more better than basically any other Kanker moment in this entire show. But it is a shame that the ending of the episode, the Eds lose against the Kankers after they did reverse psychology. The ending of this episode didn't ruin the entire episode, but it really does showcase that the Kankers still win regardless of what the Eds do. Looking back at this episode, honestly, it's one of the underrated episodes in my book when it comes to me enjoying this show, despite me discussing how mean-spirited this is, but with this episode not being mean-spirited whatsoever, the way I see it, what I really enjoyed from this episode during childhood is mainly the Eds doing reverse psychology, which is possibly the saving grace of this episode, and the example that the Kankers have a weakness. Whenever you think about the Kankers and you don't think about this episode, I don't blame you, but then again, this episode did showcase the weakness involving the Kankers. And while I'm not really on board with the Kankers being shipped with the Eds, because in all honesty, that's the last thing I ship if I ever think about Ed, and Eddy shipping. The only character that I actually found a little bit more attractive is Marie, and it's not because she has blue hair, it's mainly the fact that if she wasn't a Kanker sister and she wasn't OP, honestly she would have been a much more better character, and she would have rivaled with Naz in some other capacity, but not in the way of what happened in the season 6 episode where a huge rage came into her when she sees Double D and Naz dancing. But then again, considering that the vision is from the creator when it comes to his past experiences, this is what we ended up getting. Not complaining, but I'm just saying that Marie is the best Kanker out of the three, mainly the fact that the other two Kankers aren't attractive to me. Granted, they're not supposed to be attractive, but still. But yeah, this was incredibly satisfying to finally review this episode after postponing it from last year. Granted, it's not the only review that got postponed, considering that A Loud House, No Time to Spy got postponed to me doing Steven Universe Marathon during Summerpalooza 5, but a lot can happen when it comes to my video schedules. I'm giving this episode a 7 out of 10.